Hello and welcome to FPL Weekly. And this episode, we are going to discuss our two biggest do's and our two biggest don'ts. So just to kind of have a general chat about advice we have. And again, we're not saying that we're complete experts, but it's obviously something we love talking about and something we have a big interest in. So our two biggest do's, if you want to do well, we believe, and our two biggest don'ts that people get wrong a lot and that are going to cost people. We haven't agreed on these. We've literally just said to each other, write down two do's, write down two don'ts.
I mean, I think this has come around because what we've found between me and Johnny is I feel that we're in a little bit of a lull at the moment. And what I mean by that is we're 2 weeks on from the game being released. There's
Yep.
plenty of transfers that are happening. There's plenty
You could argue
of
this week is the biggest lull week in the whole year.
Yeah, because there's plenty of fixtures, there are plenty of pre-season games, but they're all weird in the sense of there's a lot of teams that are doing like one team for the first half, one team for the second half. They're just doing exhibition matches. They
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
really mean anything. So
End of,
ultimately
end of
we
July is the big lull period for it. And
yeah,
don't get me wrong, we'll
yeah.
build it going into the season. A week before the season, we're doing a game week one preview. Just
I feel
after the
like yeah.
season, we're doing a review. Just when the prices come out, we're going for our first draft. Before the prices come out, we're doing our price prediction. So it's the
I
perfect
just,
time
I
to
just,
do a bit of
I just, and I kind of said to you this that like I feel like I'm going round in circles with a lot of things, and I have changed my opinion on where I'm at with my draft. Like I think been quite vocal about having a premium, but like ultimately I think I'm coming away from that more. But we'll
the
come on
thing
to
is,
that.
the fact is, information changes our team. So the information today, and this is actually I've touched on in I think every single FPL pod we've had is Eze's a good option if Zaha goes. Today Zaha's gone. So I'm now strongly looking at trying to get Eze into my team. Yesterday I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was
So,
offered as an option. I'm
but
stronger
like,
today.
but next week, Eze could be out for the season with an ACL. So I just feel that there's no need to be. So I feel that we're doing a little bit more kind of planning from how we're going to strategize this year and having a little bit of philosophies about how we're going to approach FPL, and rather than actually nailing my team, like
Yeah,
because
and what we find is, well, not just us that have success, is people that have more success than us, what their tips are. Watch a lot of
mm,
YouTube videos, and we can see the advice that they give, and this is going to be very similar advice. It's not going to be
yeah.
just advice from us that are top 100, top 50k. It's going to be advice from people. It's going to be advice from someone that won the league, the whole thing last year.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
FPL community is basically, I would say personally, the FPL community is kind of top 100k. That's what I would say is the FPL community.
hmm
And if you're
And
doing well and you're breaking into that, then you're basically in the FPL community. If you're doing worse than that, then you're a part timer, which is fine, obviously.
yeah, yeah. So basically, just before we started, Johnny sent me through one saying, "Tell me what your two biggest do's are. Tell me what your two biggest don'ts are, and we'll tell each other on this time." And
And we
we
basically
sent it.
agreed if they're the same, they're the same.
And as you said, the same is a good thing because that basically means that me and him play the game quite differently. We play the game template, but like we do attack it in a little bit of a different way. And so yeah, so we wanted to be impartial, but yeah, and we
I think
do, and
just
we
really
watch.
quickly on that, I think I'm more numbers based. That's how I am as a person. I'm very numbersy. I always have been. I think yours more is more eye test. No matter how good someone is in my eye, I will still look at their XGI. Whereas I think
Hmm,
even if someone's
that's
XGI
that.
isn't great, but your eye test is like, whoa, then you'll be a bit more keen. That's fine.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
different
and
ways
that
of
and
playing
that's
the game.
where certain people like Watkins just don't really come into my thinking because I don't really rate him as a footballer. So So it's whereas I'm super sweet on Foden because I really rate him as a footballer, and and there's good and there's bad. Like you play the game just completely, numbers,
Quite
fixtures,
data-driven.
numbers,
Yeah.
fixtures, date.
I've got more that way. The more time goes on and the more I've got into it, I've got a bit more data-driven. Because the data wasn't. I only knew about the data when I was watching YouTube videos, right? If you don't get into the YouTube videos and you're not on a fantasy football hub or a fantasy football scout, then you don't really know the data. It's just being aware of the data has given me a reason to.
And by the way, by the way, I don't go actively against the data. That's I don't
like Darwin Nunes last year. He came out at 1 xg per game or something, and you have to sit up and go, "Oh God," don't you?
Yeah.
You can't just ignore
it. Yeah. Perfect. So
you want to start us off?
Yeah. So my two biggest do's.
And like I said, we didn't change these. We literally did two each. We told each other about them just before we came on. We said if they're the same, they're the same. We haven't discussed them.
Mm-hmm. So my biggest do's are, my first one is when I'm picking defenders, I'm really thinking about fixtures. And the main reason why I say that is because I'm hoping that defenders get me a clean sheet. So if I'm thinking about the next 4 games, 6 games, if there's 4 games, I want 3 of them to be at home, or 3 of them to be against teams that are highly likely to get a clean sheet or give me the best chance of a clean sheet. And when I'm thinking about attackers, I'm thinking about form. So in the last 6 games, they've scored 5 goals, or they've got 6 returns in the last 6 games. So defenders, fixtures, attackers, form. That is where I'm kind of at. It makes the start of the season quite hard because there's no form. But if you're picking teams if you're picking players from really good teams with good fixtures, then you can't go too far wrong. I.e., Saka. I think Saka is a great pick because you can't go too far wrong because of where he's at. And then that comes on to my second point, which is plan. I'll give someone. I think we've said it before. Me and you will come in the top 1 million this year.
Yeah.
Guarantee.
Yeah.
Guarantee.
Yeah.
Guarantee.
There was 12 million players last year. But yeah, I agree because of time spent.
I will, and if you're in it to win mini leagues, and your mini league consists of 10 people, I will. If you don't miss a deadline, if you have educated choices, and
I'll probably be odds
even
on.
I would say that you are more than and what I mean by educated choices is don't go rogue. Not don't go rogue, but
We'll come on to that. I'm just one of my
don't I mean, obviously that's completely you, isn't it? But if there's a 50-50 choice, then there's a 50-50 choice, and then if you choose wrong one, you choose the wrong one. I.e., Isaac and Wilson, Havertz and Watkins last year. It was very 50-50, and you were the wrong side of them 50-50 choices last year. And that's the game, right? That's the game.
And I was still 100k and I felt like I had a bad season.
If you plan and you plan well, then I would. There's a big guarantee that you're going to do okay, and that's the top million, and you're in the top 10. You're in the top 20% in the world. So there's my 2 biggest advices.
Mine is very similar. One's exactly the same plan, and I think it's just such an important thing. So many people that I see, and it's fine, I get it, they don't take it seriously, that's absolutely fine. But so many people go, oh yeah, I've got 17 this week. Johnny, what's your thoughts? Probably this guy. Okay, that'll do. Bam, bam, bam. week by week, it's who have they got next week? They never look at who they've got in 4 game weeks time. So I tend to look on average 4 to 6 game weeks ahead. On average, sometimes 4 to 6 is about right. For example, you might look at this week and go, Luton at home. And they've got Forest at home next week, bang. But if they've then got City away, Arsenal away, and Chelsea away, Liverpool away, then I'm like, if I don't buy a player for 2 weeks, I buy a player for 10 weeks at least. I don't bring a transfer in for less than 6 game weeks, 7, 8 game weeks. What's off the point? I have to look at a run, not just a.
Yeah, and last season was a really good example of this from my point of view. I had to activate an early second wild card because things didn't go too well for me, and then I literally was planning. I was planning like it was like chess. I was 6 weeks ahead my moves to ensure that I had the team that I wanted when everyone was wildcarding. And
there's a transfer plan as well. You can use FPL.team, pretty good. Something I got you onto, where unfortunately on the normal FPL site you can't run through your team each week and see your team in terms of who they're going to play. You can do on FPL.team, so it's a transfer planner basically, where you might look at one week and go, they're not on my team there, they're not on my team there, they're on the chopping block. So you look through weeks and go, is my team good enough that week, etc., etc. So yeah, looking ahead is massive. And like I say, if you don't, you'll just get sucked into the next 2 game weeks. Then you're then faced with a player that's got 3 or 4 tough games in a row that's holding value. Let's say someone like Jota that's in a very, very good side that holds some value at 7.5 million. But if they've got City away, Arsenal away, etc., you may even think about benching them, and then you're benching a player that's holding a lot of value, so it's a bit pointless. So yeah, planning is so important, and it's probably the biggest thing that sets apart decent FPL players from average ones. The average ones go, it's the deadline today. Oh bugger, let's just do this and this, and this guy's injured. How much money have I got to spend? He'll do. Let's move on. Planning's massive, and similar to yours, but not exactly the same. Slightly different on fixtures. So we always describe me as a fixtures pervert. I am a fixtures pervert. Like, I will not have a player that has bad fixtures. This is not a great example, but I would never nail down a player in my team if they have it. If Haaland started the season with Arsenal away, Liverpool away, Chelsea away, I would consider not having him until game week 4. I would consider it. Newcastle's the best example. One of the best defences in the league last year. Trippier was one of the best players we've ever seen in defence. Nearly got the defensive record. Brightly has gone up to price at 6.5. That's fair enough. But he's not in our teams because their fixture runs terrible for the first 4 games. Whereas your part-timer is still quite highly owned, Jeff. I think Trippier is a perfect example. Trippier is highly owned in the non-players community. Yeah. So in the players that go, he did well last year. He's good on bonus points, and he's on free kicks, and he does get a lot of assists. Those FPL players will have him. Oh my God, look at last year. He got 42 more points than any other defender. We've got to have him. But they ignore the fact that they've got really tough fixtures. So he's 35% owned, Trippier. I haven't seen I've seen about 20 to 25 drafts from experts. None of them have Trippier. And he's 35. He's the second highest owned defender in the whole game. He's a perfect example of those 34%, I would say 1 or 2% of them are top 100k FPLers. And I'm not saying Trippier is not going to be a good option at some point. Which is really quickly on him. The first 4 fixtures, Villa at home, not great. Villa are a good side. Terrible, but it's not great. City away, the worst fixture you can possibly get. They will concede a goal, Man City. It's just, I'm going to get my words down. It's hugely unlikely that they're going to keep a clean sheet at Man City. Liverpool at home, are you not going to go there and score? Doubt it. Brighton away, I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible. We create a hell of a lot of XG. I'd be very surprised if we didn't score. I can't see a clean sheet in their first 4 games, so why would you pick one of their players? But game week 5, Brentford at home, Sheffield United away, Burnley at home, West Ham away, Palace at home, Wolves away. Arsenal at home, not too bad. Bournemouth away. That's an incredibly good run. So from game week 5 to 12, Trippier is a really good option. Really good option. But from game week 1 to 4, he's a terrible option. So he's one that I'll never say never on, but he's not even in our thought processes right now. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about planning, and that's what I talk about when I talk about fixtures. The bottom one, it can just be a kind of a bit of a placeholder. I can just bench him until he comes in. I think I'd rather do that than pre-plan a transfer. We talked about a little bit about this before we came on. There's a difference between planning ahead and booking a transfer in. So I'm not going to book in Botman for a Stupinan game week 5. Might be a move I make. We're not going to book it in. I'd rather have him now and save a transfer and then just kind of flip flop them a little bit. But
I mean, I think that you're gonna, yeah. I mean, there's
a good example is I'd rather have an Mbumo with a really good run of fixtures than an Odegaard with Man City away, Liverpool away, Chelsea away, Arsenal away.
I was a little bit obsessed with price last year, and
price changes and key value.
Yeah, I was a little bit obsessed with it. Don't know whether it was good.
Price changes are important. They are important.
No, but I was taking it to the point where it was possibly a detriment to my team. Like I was doing transfers based on the price rather than the information I was being given. So, but anyway, that's. But
I always said that to you when you were kind of later on board than me. I think it's fair to say. I always said to you, leave it at the last minute as much as you can. There's certain examples like the Haaland Kane thing where you have to go early. 95% of the time, leave it to the last minute. Buy yourself time.
Oh yeah.
You get changed. People can get injured in training all the time. It's another fairly good tip actually. It's not on my official list, but leave your transfer to the last minute. / if you want to take it as seriously as us, and I said this to you when you were on the golf course, set an alarm. Set an alarm is a great bit of advice. Do you remember the deadline I missed when I was in Spain? Kicked myself. I got away with it. It only cost me about 4 to 6 points, probably. Could have been tragic. Missing deadline is, if you want to do well at FPL, missing deadlines is unacceptable. So how do we make sure we get up for work? We set an alarm. How do we make sure we don't miss a deadline on FPL? We set an alarm. And like I say, yes, people will go, oh, so sad. Fine. You probably, if you're that kind of person, you're probably not listening to us anyway. So if you want to take it seriously, set an alarm half an hour before the deadline. That way you can't forget it. And like I say, I try and leave it to the last possible minute. One is injuries can happen at any time. Breaking news can happen at any time. You could have a player in your team. Bruno's out for 6 weeks. Training. Pulled a calf in training. Oh, but I've already brought in someone else. Oh, now I have to spend money on a transfer. And also team news. Last minute, you get team news. And you only get team news usually on one fixture. But that can be make or break. Well, leave it. That's my advice. Leave it the last possible minute, unless very rare situation that you had where you knew Haaland was going up and Kane was going down. You had to jump. But even then, you might have jumped early then, and then Rashford gets injured in training, and you're like,
oh. Yeah.
Whereas I may not have jumped. Yes, I might have missed out on the value, but then I could have taken Rashford out of my team for free, and you would have had to take Rashford out of your team for a hit. So yeah, in general, leave it to the last one. Just another tip as well.
So don't. So I'll go first. So yeah,
let's do the bandwagon one, because we literally, I think we wrote the same words, didn't we? My don't was don't get sucked into bandwagons, and your don't was don't get sucked in.
Yeah. So the reason why I say that is because I feel like we're potentially contributing to these bandwagons, but like I think one of them that's picking up speed, that's a really good example is Flecken. Okay, so Pickford, Pickford doesn't feel like a bandwagon. It just feels like it's a choice that people are potential. But Flecken, right? We have zero.
We have zero.
zero information that he is nailed as the
If Raya starts the season, I'm not trying to have him flex. It's too risky.
No, but you don't know if Ray is going to start. The thing.
If Ray gets sold, is what I'm saying. People that have Flecken in their team are assuming Ray is getting sold.
Yeah.
If Ray and Flecker are both in that squad on match day 1, you can't pick either of them. You just can't.
No.
People that are having Flecken are assuming that Ray is getting sold. All I'm saying is, as you're mentioning, as of right now on this night, he's a bad option. Next week, he might be the most popular owned player in the game if Raya gets sold somewhere.
And so yeah, that's so what I'm
Neto last year was a great example of that.
Yeah. Who?
Everyone had Neto.
Oh, Neto. Yeah. And we're both sat here as Pedro Neto fan owners.
Yeah. I don't think I did in the end. I don't think I did. I think you did. I don't think I did.
Yeah, I'm
pretty sure I did it. But
I definitely did. Like, it was
50-60% did.
And
I think he got 1 goal all season.
And I don't think that didn't see it seemed like an educated decision, but it only took quite a few of the Twitter community to start getting this ball rolling. And then before you know it, that little snowball is now like an avalanche. And what I mean by that
50 or 60% owned. He was so highly owned. Yeah. And just quickly on that, don't get too stuck into pre-season because he had a good pre-season. Everyone picked him and he bombed. So that's why I'll take pre-season with a pinch of salt. He got no goals and 2 assists last year.
So ultimately, I'm encouraging people to play their own game. Johnson is, you know, and when I say don't get sucked in, it's don't get sucked into playing something that you're not going to enjoy doing, because you really enjoy planning the XG, the data. You love making them kind of choices that you go, that's a data-driven choice. I'm taking look out of it, and that's how you like to play. That's how you like to play.
Even more so now, because the decision that I made where I go against that was Havertz Watkins. Data decision was Watkins. I went with the gut decision, the play my own game decision, which was Havertz, and it went terribly wrong. It cost me about 60 points.
And that was
even
where
after that, I'm now even more data driven now.
And that was where I got sucked in.
Yeah.
Because I got sucked in to, I wasn't even considering any of them, and you persuaded, and your sweetness turned me against it. So I'm not going to say it wouldn't happen, and it's going to happen at some point to everyone, but do definitely be a little bit conscious about it and think to yourself,
take the data, take the opinions, watch YouTube videos, but don't wholly and full-heartedly subscribe to something. If you want to, that's fine, but don't get too carried away by something. The Grealish one was a perfect example. Rashford got injured. Everyone was like, the only move that you could possibly make this week is Grealish for Rashford. There's nothing else in the whole wide world that you could possibly do with your transfer this week. I just thought, I looked at it, I took myself away from that bandwagon and said, yes, Grealish is quite nailed at the moment, but his output isn't that great. That's not me knocking him. And yes, I don't hugely rate him, but I'm taking that aside. His output, as a fact, is not as big an output as a Foden is capable of. We know that. He's an important player, but he's not necessarily an FPL player. So I stood back, looked at the data, and thought, he's not doing a great deal. And by the way, he did nothing in terms of XG, did nothing in terms of goals and assists for the rest of the season. I think he might have got one assist. So all of those people that went on that bandwagon, they got costed because they took Rashford out because they panicked because he was red flagged. And then all of a sudden, 2 game weeks later, they wanted him back. He had a double. So that's 2 moves. We sat on our hands and said, let's bet against Grealish. Let's keep Rashford. And it paid off. So, don't get sucked in too much to bandwagon. But I tell you a good example. Purvis Stupinan is a great example. It's 55% owned or something like that now. That's a bandwagon. But it's a bandwagon that I like because maybe I'm biased. But I think it's a warranted bandwagon because he is attacking. We have got good fixtures. But he is a player that after 4 or 5 game weeks, you might go, when our fixtures turn, you might go, don't know. So he's a bit of a bandwagon now. That's gathering steam. And bear that in mind, but don't therefore go, I have to have Burgess. You don't have to have Burgess. You don't.
There is,
You know that he's a player
there
I
is
like
an
as well. You know how much I banged on about him last year.
there is an ownership issue though as well, in the fact that if these bandwagons gather so much pace that actually we might need to go with them even though we don't want to, because if we don't own them, then we're potentially going to get so screwed over if they explode. If enough people are saying it, then there might be some truth in it. Like,
I think that's a perfect segue into my second don't, which I think you've just teed me up so nicely for that I'm not going to be able to not hit that drive off that tee, to be honest. So you teed me up perfectly. So that's my second one, is don't go too against the grain. So what I mean by that is, if you're going against a highly owned player, you're taking a big risk. So Purvis is a great example. You don't have to go with him, but if he's 55% owned, he hauls against Luton, you're up against it straight away. Because most people have got those points, most people have him, most people will therefore go up in value, and all of a sudden you're racing to get him in your side. So, like, you take it. Look, Haaland is probably a bad example, but if you're going against Haaland, you're but I'm trying not to use the word idiot, but we don't think that's a particularly great call going against Haaland. He's 90% owned, and if he takes off, you've lost before you started. So, yeah.
I did want to have a quick update. I wanted to have a quick update on these. Yeah, 86.1% owned Haaland.
And that all started about 90.
That's just crazy.
The more players that keep subscribing, the more we'll have it. I think it'll start about 90.
Well, like
again in the expert community, the F99, by the way. That's it's the robots. It's the 5% of robots that don't have him. It's the people that are still on the randomised teams that don't have him. Anyone that knows what they're doing has got Haaland.
Yeah, and yeah, I completely agree. And that's where my team is actually changing a little bit, because I've been sweet on the premium, but ultimately I am going too far against the grain, and I don't actually need to. Like, I do really like a premium, and I think that my team is good, but like, I'm missing out on too much Arsenal attack. I'm missing out on the United attack, making too many sacrifices for it, and
ultimately, we never know. Like, you can never predict the future. Like, you might go against your premium, and you might go, "Oh God, I should have started with my premium." Because if Salah and Kane, unlikely, I think you're doing the right thing going against it. But if Salah and Kane take off, Salah's 25% owned and Kane's 17% owned, off the top of my head. If they take off, you're laughing. So, do you know what I mean? Whereas, but if they don't, and your Sakas and your Rashfords and your Brunos, that one or two of them you're probably gonna have to miss out on, take off, and Salah and Kane do nothing, then you're in the mud. So it's a balance. I think it's important to have a balance of play your own game / don't take any unnecessary risks. It's also the start of the season. Like, if I'm doing the
Harry Kane's 14% owned, by the way. So, like, if he goes off, there's only 14% of the community who are gonna explode, and I can deal with that. Whereas if Matoma, if I go against having Matoma, which I am considering, by the way, 37.7. So that's over double. If I choose to not have Purvis, it's 51.2. Like, so it's there's
you have to take that into account. Is it worth the risk early on in the season going against highly owned players? That's the last point I want to make about that exact point I was making. Was you hear it all the time in the FPL community, 10 players for a reason. And what that means really is template team is template team for a reason, and that's because a lot of experts are going for it. A lot of our experts are going for it for a reason. It's not a guarantee of it doing well, but it's a data-driven team that's got good value. There's players this year, especially in midfield, that are too cheap. Bruno at 8.5 is too cheap. Saka at 8.5 is too cheap. Bumo at 6.5 is too cheap. Dargy Rashford at 9 million is too cheap. Sterling has the potential to be too cheap. Foden has the potential to be too cheap at 7.5. So they may probably have got a couple wrong here. And I can't. I love value. So if I think a player is too cheap, Bruno, in my opinion, is too cheap. I'm going to struggle not to have him. Now, the issue I have is I want Rashford as well. And if I had to go against one of them, then it probably is Bruno. But he's way too cheap. I mean, not even close. 9 million is too cheap. Based on his data, based on his expected data last year, he didn't perform to his expected data. He was a bit unlucky. Based on his expected data, he was a 10 million player that we're getting for 8.5. So that's just what I mean in terms of, like, yeah, template for a reason. But at the same time, what I wanted to add to that, and that is a big advice of mine, but there's no harm in going a little bit different. But don't go different with your whole team. Go different with 2 or 3, and don't go crazy different. Don't go for someone that's like 0.1% owned, because there's a reason they're 0.1% owned. But players that I'm considering that are a little bit different, I think Foden's a great example of someone that's a little bit different, a little bit of a risk because of minutes. His minutes put people off, but he's a risk that could massively pay off. And this is where it's a good example of a risk that could pay off. Like I said, he's lowly owned, but he has a high roof. He's a player that the AI team on Fantasy Football Hub don't particularly like because they're assuming he's not going to get many minutes. Therefore, he's going to put a lot of the experts off. But we know, and this is where the data breaks down a little bit. We know that now Mahrez has gone, and if De Bruyne doesn't start the season, here's the information stuff that he will play. And talking about our fixture run thing, that's another bit of advice. Their fixture run is phenomenal. I don't want to miss out on their fixture run, because when it gets to game week 7 and 8, and I've got Arsenal away, Liverpool away, Chelsea away, Foden could have 70 points by it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, damn. So I don't want to really miss out on City's fixture run, and that's where I don't have enough City coverage at the moment. So Foden is one I'm strongly considering that's a lowly owned player. Like I said, don't mind doing it once or twice. Don't do it more than 3 times, because you're just going to kill yourself. Don't go for just wild players that I've seen, like Bruno Guimaraes. He's a fantastic footballer. I'm really confident he's not a good FPL option. But that's a good example. Declan Rice is a fantastic footballer. He's not a good FPL option. Golo Kante, the last few years, has been a phenomenal footballer. He's a terrible FPL option. But don't get sucked into great players and going, wow, Bruno, I love Bruno. He's an amazing player and he's only 6 million. It's not about being an amazing player. It's about being a good FPL option. And there's so many players that I've seen in teams. Lucas Paqueta is a great example. I think he's a fantastic player. A good FPL option.
Yeah. So my final don't is transfers, and those 0.4s add up, baby. Okay. And what I mean by that, and this comes from planning, right? And what I mean by that is if you're going to take a 0.4, it cannot be because that game week is good. It's got to be that next 6 game weeks are good. And if you can plan your better routes, then you don't need to be taking 0.4s that, you really can be saving them. You can be, because my God, they add up. If you've taken 10 hits throughout, which isn't vast, that's not
I didn't take many last year. I completely agree with you. It's something that I've learned, but it's taken me a lot of time to learn. I used to take loads of hits, but the more I tell you, it was one year where I looked at the end of the game and I'd taken something like, the top of my head, 15 to 20 hits, and I looked at that and that was about 75 points. And
Well, it's
then
10.
I'd lost mini leagues by 15, 20 points, and I thought, well, there you go. I do half the amount of transfers, I win the league. That's not quite as simple as that, but when you look at your amount of point hits you've taken by the end of the year, you go, holy crap. The amount of time
it's really hard to
over the year,
quantify. It's really hard to quantify the benefits versus the
yeah, you're right. It
non-benefits.
has to be long term. It has to be long term benefits as to why you take a hit. The amount of
Yeah,
times I've taken a hit and done, let's say, 3 transfers when I've only got two, taken the 4 point hit, and if I'd have stuck with my original team, they would have got more points. The amount of time that's happened is scary, and I think
yeah,
you're
and
safer off not taking the hit than taking the hit, because if you're taking the
and
hit,
that's
you have to exceed. If you don't take the hit, less risky.
and and that's where owning players who are more nailed.
Yeah,
So
100%.
Martinelli versus Saka. There's I'm a major Saka Martinelli fan. However, I just think
Nailed
nobody is
penalty.
take nobody is taking that Saka position from him. Whereas
90 minutes,
there's
90 minutes as well.
probably three people: Havertz, Trossard, and Martinelli. Now, look, Martinelli is probably, I'm going to say, he's an 80% chance to start that first game, but like for 0.5 more, Saka's on the other side, and then if you don't have to, then that's one transfer saved by going
He can
by
sit
going
there. He's
against
going to
it.
sit in my team for 10 weeks, at least 10 weeks. He may sit there the whole season. He's just going to sit there. I don't have to worry about
So
him.
yeah,
Unless he
yeah,
continues. Because, like you say, let's assume that Saka and Martinelli are the same quality of player. I personally think they're roughly equal. Let's just assume that. 0.5 million, you're getting more nailed to start. You're getting, even if they both start, who's more likely to
mm-hmm.
get taken off early? And someone's on penalties. So that's 0.5. In some other gaps in teams, you're paying 2 million, 3 million extra for nailed and penalties.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
1 million
So
for
I
nailed
think,
and penalties.
and it only means then. So say that's a 50-50 choice, and you've flipped the coin and you've gone for Martinelli, and Trossard's now starting every game because he keeps on scoring. Okay, now you've got an issue with transfer there where you've got to transfer Martinelli out. Say his price starts plummeting and his price starts going down. Okay, with all the other people who are trying to get rid of him, and you've also got an injury to a defender, and you've got Haaland there blanking in the next game week. Okay, so you're now looking at it where you've got a situation where you're having to make transfers and take hits, which I'm telling you that that's not a good option to do. Mainly because you've not planned it well, but mainly because your choices that you've gone for, those 50-50 choices, probably weren't 50-50 and they were more 60-40. And
Yeah.
you and owning that player that might be a little bit more boring, but he is a little bit more nailed and he is a little bit more owned, is possibly a better option.
Yeah.
So and that's what then makes the whole City conversation very, 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 very hard, because we all would love three City players, but we can't trust that there's going to be three nailed
Yeah,
City
exactly.
players. So,
Exactly.
like,
City
yeah,
defender is one that irritates me because they're not a bad price point. Some are 5 and some are 5.5. Great price point for the best defence in the league. You can't argue they're not the best defence in the league. They were unlucky last year, conceding the odd goal here or there. The data is not even close. They're head and shoulders the best defence in the league. So, quite like Ake, is he guaranteed to play? No. Quite like Akanji, is he guaranteed to play? No. If they sign Gavardio can play. Kyle Walker was made captain today in a preseason game. He's probably going to stay. Diaz, Stones. There's too many choices there. You're
yeah,
taking a risk on minutes. where you don't. Again, it's a wait and see. So if I see that Ake is nailed, he's an unbelievably good option for 5 million. But then City are an annoying one because you feel like he's nailed, play 4 games in a row, and you go, I'll have Ake because he's nailed, unbelievable. Then he'll get dropped for game week 5, 6, and 7. And you're like, oh great.
Yeah. So I think that is, so all in all, the big thing that we've said is plan. Ultimately we've both said there is plan, and just make sure that those players that you can get in are a little bit more nailed, and value the nailedness. Because if you value nailed, then you can play this game with one sub on your bench.
Yeah, exactly.
And that means you can save.
You don't have to worry about risking players.
And then you can save so much money. So, but yeah, perfect.
Like you say, have one risky player. Foden could be your risky player, so that your one bench option can possibly come on for Foden. But even now, with 5 subs, Foden may not start, but he will probably come on. So your bench player is not going to even come on anyway, because 5 sub has changed that dynamic hugely. You used to have a good bench. Now you don't really, because even your player that didn't start will come on and he'll block your sub anyway. So, but yeah, have one risky player, or maybe 2. Don't have more than 2. Just really, really quickly you quickly touched upon you're going away from a premium. Mine hasn't changed too much. I'm still pretty set on a 3-5-2, mainly because there's not that many good striker options. I'm not going to play a 3. I also think it's stupid to play a 1. So I can't not have 5 midfielders. I just can't not. I want 10 midfielders. So how am I going to have 4?
3-5-2 is pretty nailed for me. Pretty nailed. 3-5-2
I really
is done.
Think this year it's looking like a 3-5-2. I'm pretty nailed at the moment, but like I said, things change. Yesterday, Eze was not on my team, and today he's very, very close to knocking on the door. So things change. That's why I'm taking it a little bit quieter at the moment in terms of changes until we get more information. Colwell's a great example. If Colwell we think is nailed, he's a great option at 4.5. Chelsea. So let's wait for a bit more information, but it does look a lot to me like a 3-5-2. With one premium for me. Depends if you call Trent a premium or not. 1 or 2 premiums. I think 3 is too much.
Perfect. All done. So there is a mini league. The code is on. You can see it on FPL Weekly 11. It's on. The code will be on there. Definitely get involved. Johnson is gagging to give away these free golf lessons for life. And he, this is a PGA professional, grade A.
All right.
who's giving up his, what a prize that people are giving up. So not only are you getting this amazing information now, you also could be getting amazing golfing information. So, like, subscribe. We'll be back the following week where things will start hotting up a little bit more, maybe.
Might do a bit more talk and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe. But ultimately, I'm not going to be super interested in chopping and changing.
About a week before, it'll start getting very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Finalising drafts.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Good. All good by me.
Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.